Rain is falling on a monastery roof in northern India. Inside, an old wooden hall stands empty. No furniture, no crowd, just cool stone and gray light coming through the doorway. A young monk named Ananda stands at the entrance, staring at his teacher. He has a question he's been carrying for weeks. "I remember you saying something strange," he says. "You told me you now dwell in emptiness. Did I hear that correctly?" The Buddha nods. And what he says next will take almost 25 centuries to fully make sense to the rest of us. Here's the strange part. Most people, when they imagine emptiness, picture exactly this room. Bare, silent, nothing in it. That's what we've been told peace looks like. A blank screen. No thoughts, no noise, no self. So when people sit down to meditate for the first time, this is what they chase. They close their eyes and try to push every thought away, and when a thought slips back in, they fight it. When a feeling rises, they suppress it. And when the thoughts keep coming anyway, they open their eyes and think, "I can't do this. My mind is too loud." I've watched this happen more times than I can count. And every time, something in me wants to say, maybe the problem was never having thoughts at all. Maybe the problem was always our relationship to them. To make this less abstract, picture someone. Not a real person, just an imagined composite of a story many of us would recognize. Let's call her Elena. She's a nurse, 11 years in. In this imagined story, Elena used to cry after losing a patient. She used to feel her pulse spike when a family member raised their voice in a hallway. And somewhere in the last 2 years in this story, all of that quietly stopped. The strange thing is, she started calling it peace. "I don't let things get to me anymore," she tells her sister on the phone. "I've finally learned to let go." Her sister goes quiet for a second too long. We all know some version of this stillness, real people, not just imagined ones. The moment after a breakup when you feel nothing at all, and call it strength. The scroll through terrible news that used to make your chest tighten, and doesn't anymore. The meeting where your boss says something unfair and you just nod. We've been taught to see this as growth, as detachment, as finally getting it together. But here's a question worth sitting with, not answering right away. Is this always the calm of a mind that sees clearly? Or could it sometimes be the silence of a mind that has simply run out of power? There's no single answer that fits everyone. But it's a question worth asking honestly, about yourself more than once. That question would have made perfect sense to the man Ananda was talking to in that empty hall. Because the Buddha wasn't just a teacher. Before anything else, he was an investigator, maybe the most rigorous one history has ever produced. He didn't ask people to believe him, he asked them to look. So when Ananda asked about emptiness, the Buddha didn't answer with a concept. He pointed at the room. "This hall," he said, "is empty of elephants, cattle, gold, and silver. It's empty of crowds of people." Then he paused. "But it is not empty of the ground beneath us. It is not empty of this hall itself. It is not empty of us. Empty of what is not here. Full of what remains." One sentence, and the entire meaning of emptiness. The word so many people have gotten wrong for so long, quietly turns inside out. Picture a room filled with fog. There are 2 ways to deal with it. 1. Drag every piece of furniture out, hoping that if the room is bare enough, the fog won't matter. 2. Leave everything exactly where it is, and let the fog dissolve on its own. When it clears, the table is still there. The chairs, the paintings on the wall. They were never the problem. The fog was. And the Buddha described that fog as being made of craving, aversion, and confusion, forces that can distort how we perceive things. Where the fog is present, experience gets harder to see clearly. Where it thins, the same experience doesn't disappear, but it stops feeling like something we're drowning in. Now go back to Elena in her story, sitting in that parking lot. Maybe, in her case, the fog hadn't cleared. Maybe it had thickened until the room underneath, the patience, the fear, the love beneath the exhaustion, became harder and harder to make out. Gray, from a distance, can sometimes look a lot like peace. This is worth being careful with because numbness can come from many different places: exhaustion, grief, unprocessed trauma, or simply a body that's been running on empty for too long. This isn't about diagnosing what's happening inside anyone, including yourself, from the outside. But there's one question worth asking gently, not as a verdict. Does this stillness bring you closer to people and to what you're feeling? Or does it require you to feel less, just to get through the day? The Buddhist tradition doesn't hand out a single answer to that, but it does offer a caution. Real letting go tends to increase our contact with life, not shrink it. If a kind of calm only holds together by feeling less, it may be worth being curious about, not certain about. There's a related idea from the Buddha's very first teaching that's easy to misuse if we're not careful. So it deserves a gentle touch. He described 3 cravings that can keep a mind in chains. The craving for pleasure, the most obvious one. The craving to become something, to keep existing, to last. And a third, quieter one that the Pali texts call vibhavatanha, sometimes translated as a longing for things, including painful things, to simply stop. This isn't a diagnosis you hand to yourself or to someone you know the moment you notice numbness. Feeling flat or tired or shut down has all kinds of ordinary and legitimate causes. The Buddha wasn't offering a checklist for self-labeling. What he was offering was a question to sit with honestly over time. When I long for something painful to just disappear, is there a difference between wanting the pain to be met with clarity and wanting to disappear along with it? That's not something anyone can answer for another person. It's just worth asking quietly of yourself. 3 months earlier in Elena's story, before the parking lot, before the phone call with her sister, she'd done something that felt at the time like real progress. She'd started reading. Late at night, after shifts, she'd scroll through pages on impermanence, on non-attachment, on letting things go. She could quote entire passages. She explained the concept of equanimity to a coworker over lunch, clearly, confidently, like someone who understood it. Then, 3 days later, in this story, a patient's family member raised their voice at her in a hallway, and every bit of that understanding vanished in under a second. What was left was raw, old, familiar reaction. The same reaction she might have had years before she'd ever read a single page. This points to something real beyond any one story, the distance between reading a menu and eating a meal. We live in an age with more menus than any generation in history. Every teaching, every insight a few taps away. And the danger hiding inside all that access is simple. It's easy to confuse the reading with the eating. Understanding isn't something you download. It tends to become real the moment it stops being information and starts being practice. The moment you notice anger rising and, even once, don't immediately become it. Here's a trap that tends to catch the most sincere people, not the careless ones. Someone might come to meditation, like Elena in this story, without chasing enlightenment at all. Just wanting to sleep better, handle stress better, stop snapping at the people they love. Reasonable goals. Meditation can genuinely help with all of them. But underneath those goals, if we look closely, there's sometimes a familiar engine quietly running. I need to become someone better than who I am right now. The Buddha pointed at that engine directly, the constant push toward becoming something else, as one of the deep roots of suffering. In one of his teachings, he names 3 defilements that can keep a mind trapped. The craving for pleasure, the craving to keep becoming, and confusion about how things actually work. That middle one runs deeper than it sounds. It's the compulsion to always be turning into something else. And here's the part worth sitting with. Even a calmer version of me can, at times, be an expression of that same pattern. The object changes. Status becomes serenity, but the underlying push can stay the same. There's a difference worth noticing between effort that comes from seeing clearly and effort that comes from craving. One can feel complete in each moment, exactly as it is. The other can feel like pressure. I'm not there yet, I need to be someone other than who I am right now. That pressure, in the Buddhist teaching, can itself become a form of the very suffering someone is trying to escape. So here's the question this chapter has been circling. If fighting the mind doesn't work, and reading about the mind isn't the same as practicing it, and quiet numbness isn't the same as clarity, what actually helps? The Buddha pointed to something he called yoniso manasikāra, wise attention. One way to picture it, through two waiters carrying the exact same tray. Imagine a plate of food arrives at a table. One waiter looks at it and only sees food. A single blur, nothing in particular to notice. Another waiter looks at the same plate and sees each element separately. The sauce, the temperature, the way the herbs were cut. Same plate, two very different qualities of attention. Unwise attention tends to look at a rising feeling, anger, shame, longing, and collapse it into one thing: me, my anger, my problem, something wrong right now that needs fixing or hiding immediately. Wise attention looks at the same rising feeling and can see several things at once. A sensation in the body, a thought riding on top of it, a pattern that's fired many times before in situations like this one. A story the mind is already writing about what it means. Same event, but wise attention slows it down enough to see its parts. And when the parts become visible, something can shift. It stops feeling like a wave crashing overhead and starts feeling like something that can actually be watched arriving. The Buddha put it this way: when the mind is applied wisely, defilements that haven't arisen tend not to arise, and those that have already arisen tend to be let go of. Not suppressed, not analyzed to exhaustion, seen clearly enough that they loosen their grip on their own. 6 months later in Elena's story, she's back in the same seat. Same gray light through the windshield. The day before, a family member had raised their voice at her again in the hallway. The kind of moment that, in earlier chapters of this story, sent her either into anger or into that hollow numbness. This time, something different happened, and it happened quickly, a couple of seconds start to finish. First, the sting. A real physical tightening in the chest. Then, instead of fighting it or going numb, she noticed it, silently, without judgment. There's the sting. There's the urge to defend myself. There's an old story starting up, that I'm not good enough at this. She didn't push any of it away. She just watched each piece arrive, the way you'd watch weather move across a field. The sting, the urge, the story, each one visible, none of them fully in charge. And in the space that opened up, she answered calmly. Not because a door had closed, because, for the first time in a while, she wasn't afraid to leave it open and look straight through it. There's a pair of verses in the Dhammapada that describe someone who has walked this path a long way, the Arahat. Worth reading slowly. Like the earth, the Arahat is patient and is not provoked to respond in anger. Like the doorpost, he is firm. He is unperturbed by the ups and downs of life. He is serene and pure, like a lake free from mud. Notice what that verse does not say. It doesn't say the earth stops existing. It doesn't say the door stops swinging. It doesn't say the lake stops holding water. The earth still gets walked on. The door still opens and closes. The lake still reflects the sky and ripples in the wind, unperturbed by the ups and downs of life. Not free of them. The ups and downs are still happening. What can change is their power to knock someone off center. That's different from the numbness Elena carries earlier in her story. And in this version of the story, she starts to feel the difference from the inside. Somewhere tonight, someone might sit in a parked car, or lie awake at 2 a.m., or stare at their phone in a quiet apartment, and wonder whether what they're feeling is peace, or something else wearing its clothes. There's no single answer waiting for them. Just a question, still open, in an empty hall 25 centuries ago and right now at the same time. What you've been calling peace. Is it a door that's been closed, or a door that no longer fears being open? You don't need to manufacture stillness. You don't need to fight your own mind into silence. The practice can begin somewhere much simpler than that. The moment you pause and actually look at what's already here, right now, in this mind, in this breath. You may not find a void there. You might find something more alive and less trapped than expected.